Many of the greatest accomplishments of men and women, whether it be notable like climbing Mount Everest or little known such as discovering antibiotics in scientific research, all have virtues that are common to achieving the goal. Those common virtues are fortitude, persistence, and a desire to overcome, or what we call in the Marines, true grit. These virtues are not learned, but experienced. I believe one of the reasons why the greatest generation, the generation that fought in World War II, has such a great determination, both in the battlefield as well as a peacetime to build such a great American economy, was because they went through the school of hard knocks called the Depression, which they had to survive. People must experience the hardships, whether they be in boot camp for the military or maybe even their upbringing. These hardships and sufferings build character in the form of virtue. Hello everyone, today's episode is about climbing Mount Kilimanjaro and how this experience affected each one of us. It was myself, my 17-year-old son, and a priest from the Diocese of Tabora who climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. Mount Kilimanjaro is the world's highest freestanding mountain. The height is a little over 19,300 feet. It really took true grit and determination to climb this mountain. I was extremely proud and impressed with my son. The amount of pain and psychological heartaches we encountered were extremely huge, which would impress any Marine training. Very few people can claim to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. Even fewer can claim to climb at the age of 17. Let's listen to how we all were able to overcome and achieve such a great accomplishment.
Welcome to another episode of Practical Catholic with David Cease. Practical Catholic is a spiritual coaching show to help you find peace, love, and joy in family and work life. We are here each and every week to help you grow spiritually, to become successful in this life, and to be a saint for the life after.
My story begins with how this bright idea of me climbing Mount Kilimanjaro with my son began. You know, like any other journey, it begins with the first step, and that first step is always an idea. And that idea was brought to me by Dr. Mahfoud, Sebastian Mahfoud, who is the vice president of Holy Apostles College and Seminary. And he said to me, "Would you like to climb Mount Kilimanjaro?" And at that time, I had this idea that climbing Mount Kilimanjaro was kind of similar to climbing Mount Everest, where you had to be, use special equipment, and you'd be, going up this, scaling these walls of rock and ice. And so I sent him an email and I said, "Well, is it difficult?" And he kind of read my mind. He's a very smart man. And he said, "David, it's more of a hike than it is rock climbing." Now that I've actually climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, there is some climbing you have to do, but you don't need special equipment or anything like that. But, and so I figured, well, if it's more like a hike, then maybe I can do it. So I did a lot of research on, climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. And one of the big things that you have to worry about is high altitude sickness. And there's a lot of secondary issues that occur because of high altitude sickness. The secondary ones are things like injury caused by falls, or some of the ice and glaciers that could cause some frostbite because it is extremely cold up there. And so I was up for the challenge. Being a Marine, I thought this was going to be a walk in the park and should be fairly easy and do it. And it was a great way of bringing my son, who would have graduated, and he did graduate from high school and is going into college. And I wanted him to experience something that would be difficult. I would kind of be used to it. We used to do a lot of forest hikes in the Marines, and so, but never to the point like Kilimanjaro, and not to the altitude. And that high altitude sickness definitely is something there. So I began that journey, and it began with a thought. That thought became a determination. And to add more to the determination was I wanted to make this into a charity fundraiser. And so by doing that, we started a GoFundMe. where it would support the Diocese of Deborah with a well. Now being here in Africa, I've realized how important water is. And so it's really, really life-giving, especially here in the area of Deborah. The second one, another charity, was also fundraising for the children with albinism here in the Diocese of Deborah. If you don't know much about their plight, it basically is that they're completely white Africans who are sought after because of their body parts. They actually are killed and their body parts cut so that for good luck charms, for witchcraft and everything else. So I had this great determination of not only climbing Mount Kilimanjaro with my son, but also starting this fundraiser. And we were able to do both. And so today's talk, today's story is not the end, but the beginning. And we're going to talk about the journey of this climb of Mount Kilimanjaro with a panel that I have right here with me. This past week we went and we climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. Here with me is two people that came to Mount Kilimanjaro with me. One is my son, my 17-year-old son, who I'm very proud of for making it and climbing such a difficult moment and sharing this great moment of climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. For those who don't know about Mount Kilimanjaro, the mountain is about 19,381 feet elevation, which for those who don't know are roughly around 13,000 feet. You hit high altitude sickness, and it's called the danger zone, where the altitude sickness is so severe that you will actually feel pain in your head, as well as vomiting and throwing up. And the blood saturation, believe it or not, once you get about 19,000, is about 70% less than what you have right now, what you're breathing right now. So the difficulties of climbing this mountain is very huge. Not all, including that it's tough to breathe, but to the journey to get to the mountain, we were hiking on average about 13 miles a day. So, and when we're talking about hiking 13 miles a day, this is zigzagging, this is rock climbing kind of. This is terrain that you're going up a valley, you're going down a valley. We'll share a certain point of our journey where we really thought we were almost there at the end of at our base camp, when we realized that we still had to go another 6-7 more miles. That was way further than where we needed to go to in doing that. So how do people like us make it? Believe it or not, a lot of people failed. There were a lot of rescue helicopters that came and had to take people away. People needed oxygen, and they had to be rescued because they couldn't make it. Well, the one thing that I always like to emphasize in Practical Catholic is God gave us in our soul this one aspect called the will. We have an intellect and we have the will. And that's what makes us uniquely humans, is this ability to have an intellect and a will. The intellect allows us to reason and to think, right? While the will helps us to accomplish what we need to do. And I'm a firm believer that virtue cannot be taught. Virtue has to be experienced, right? We can learn about virtue, virtue of patience, virtue of persistence, perseverance, courage, fortitude. But at the end of the day, we have to experience it. We have to actually muster our will to have that patience, to have that perseverance, and doing that. So I'm not the only one that's going to talk. I'm probably going to have, I'm going to ask some questions to the panel here that was with me to discuss what their experience and what they learned from climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. So Joshua, I'm going to have you go first. Okay. I'll give you the easiest one. What part of the hike do you think was the hardest part?
I would definitely say 100% the summit day was by far the hardest day. I think we hiked we hiked 12 miles?
12 miles, yes.
And it was all uphill. And the breathing was incredibly hard, and the searing headache, and it was so painful. That's what I remember from that.
But what kept you going? Why didn't you quit?
I think a lot of what kept me going was if you look back and you look at what you've already covered, you kind of surprise yourself, and then you just turn around and bow your head and just keep on methodically going forward. But even throughout the hike, when you look back, I was personally amazed at how much ground we were able to cover, and that kind of motivates you to keep on going.
Wow. That's really interesting, because most people would say that they look forward to a goal.
Yeah, you look, but if you look backwards and you see all of what you've done, and I personally, especially not just the summit day, but one day we covered I think it was day 2.
Yeah.
And when you look back and you see the trail in the distance, and you're like, wow, like I can't believe that I walked all the way from there to here. And a big part of it was just keeping your head down, because the headache doesn't hurt as much when you keep your head down.
Yeah.
And you just kind of just keep on walking.
Yes.
So, and then the porter said that too, that if you just look at the ground and focus on your steps,
yes,
it helps out a lot.
I think one of the things I think you're pointing out when you look behind is to always kind of look at how much progress you made, and how much in a spiritual sense we should do that as well, is to look behind us to say, hey, I have grown a lot. But sometimes we fail to see how much we've really, really gained, and I don't know, the possibilities that you can do. You can do it. I mean, that's what you're just saying.
Yeah, it's kind of like if I just did finish calculus, and in the beginning of the year you flipped to less than 100, and you're like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. I don't know if I can't, like, this looks impossible. But then when you actually get to 100, and you look back at what you did, it just makes so much more sense.
Yes.
So much more sense to you, and it seems more realistic and actually doable.
Yes. Yes.
So
that's very interesting. Looking back as a way of being motivated to go forward. That's and I totally understand what you mean.
Yeah.
So Father, what do you think was your most difficult part in the whole climb?
Yeah, for me, if I can remember well, I think the last camp but one before climbing to the Stellar Point was a bit difficult, because when we slept at the camp, and I was told that the next day we are going to climb that Locker Mountain, I was kind of scared. But the guides kept saying that it is doable. It's doable. It's doable. So, and having in my mind that you have come to do this, you have to accomplish this, that spirit kept burning in my heart. And my mind was kind of like, you have to do it. So that thinking, that feeling kept me strong. And when we started, I don't know where the strength came from my body, and I was able to do it. So that reminds me of the kind that when you have proper planning, you have willpower, and determination, the rest is doable.
Right.
So I think my fellow David and his son Joshua, I could see them ahead of me. That could give me also a reason to go further. So I put God first as always as a priest, and the faithful of Christ, but you have to have a plan, a willpower, and a determined way of accomplishing what you have planned before.
Yeah.
So that was the difficult part, but not so difficult because of the plan and the willpower and the determination I had. And the rest is a story of another day.
Or history. The rest is history,
Yes,
as they say,
yes.
right? So for me, the hardest part, believe it or not, was not ascending the mountain. No, it wasn't. It was actually descending the mountain was my most horrid. Actually, it was sleeping overnight at Crater Rock. Sleeping over there. When I'm thinking that we're at 13,000 feet, which for the audience, 13,000 feet is reasonable because we were acclimated to that altitude. Even though there is high altitude sickness there, it wasn't as high as 15 or 16,000 feet, which we were at when we were ascending, Mount Kilimanjaro. So we were actually sleeping at 18,000 feet. Roughly, I would say about that high. Let's say 17 at the worst case scenario, but I would say
they told us something like
no. I mean
13 about.
No, it was about 18.
They also said a lot of things.
Yeah. So I got incredibly sick. I was throwing up, headaches, and mind you, I wasn't like this. I had slight headaches, but nothing at this level. So my son, because he was tired of being on the mountain, decides, I want to go home. So we had to descend this mountain, in one day.
In a single day.
And when I say descend this mountain, we actually had to go literally 45 minutes to the peak of the mountain, which is Stella Mar. Yes. So we had to go above the crater to Stella Mar and then hike all the way down.
Yes.
In, I think, 10 hours or whatever? Because I think we left at 6 and we got there at 6:30, so 12 hours. 12 hours. And it was painstaking, rocky, all downhill, and you can feel it in your toes because your toes keep getting jammed.
Yes.
You can feel it. My whole foot at the bottom got blisters, toe, jam, bruises. You can feel it in your knees because your knees are stopping you from going down. And it's just a pounding for 12 hours straight down. And we had to meet a kind of a truck down at the bottom. And I was behind. I was the last one. And it was painful. And I can say that was actually my worst experience. Climbing up was very difficult. And it took a lot of sheer power for me to get down that mountain. And I think at one time I was really thinking about just saying, look, do we really need to go home? Can't we just make base that last camp we were in to say, can't we just sleep here and then we'll do the last tomorrow? But in some ways I'm glad that we did make it on there. So it was, phenomenal. What do you think, what do you, Joshua, take away from this trip? What life lesson do you think you take away?
I can't say I've thought about a life lesson. Most of the I mean, as you're hiking up, you have a lot of time to think to yourself, and one thing that also helped me keep going was if I can do this, what else can I do?
Yes.
That was probably the biggest thing. So I'd be like, all right, I do the thing where you set little goals where you say, all right, going to focus on getting to that rock structure or whatever. So let's go for it. And so, every step I'm just like, if I can do this, I could do anything, that kind of mentality just, that's what I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, to sum it up, you kind of, you're able to set little goals to get that bigger goal.
Yeah.
And that once you learn that lesson, you really can conquer anything in life, because life is nothing more than taking a big goal and chunking it down to little goals. And honestly, you can. I just posted today on Instagram that we made it to Mount Kilimanjaro. And one of the things I said about you on there, Josh, was that, that the determination and the grit to make it. Grit is a very old term, but is an affectionate term that the military uses. Mm-hmm. And I said that you would be, would make a fine Marine showing what you just did today, or not today, but climbing up Mount Kilimanjaro, because it really took true grit and determination to get up there. And if you can do that, then you can do anything. You really can. Yeah. What about you, Father? I know you're a lot older and you have a lot more life experience, but what do you think, Father? Did you get any life experience?
Yeah, for me, it was an ample time to remember. There is a story I was told when I was young that there is one guy who went all the way to Uhuru Peak at the top of Mountain Kilimanjaro and put a national flag. So I was kind of wanting to make an history like him, that go and be there and see what he did.
Right.
Go and prove what you have heard about Uhuru Peak. So when I was climbing the mountain, I was having some kind of discussions in my mind. And when I reached there, when I saw Uhuru Peak, I was almost in tears. Though nobody could see my tears dropping, but I could feel that myself. And that was a huge accomplishment, in a way, kind of proving things in my life. And that has given me a thing to remain in my heart, in my mind, that whenever you plan to achieve something, no matter the obstacles, you can achieve it.
Yeah.
As I'm a lover of music, soft music, there is one song by Celine Dion, I think they are Kelly, if I'm not mistaken. They say, no mountain is too high for you to climb if you are having a climbing faith.
Yeah.
So I'm encouraging you guys there, that if you have a climbing faith and you want to climb Mountain Kilimanjaro, you can do it.
Yeah.
Just have a proper planning, a willpower, and determination. Yeah. That's all from me. Thank you.
So, no, that's great. And you can. I think that anyone with their faith can climb a mountain, and we can see that. It takes determination. For me, I think my life lesson was about how much we really need each other. I was very, very impressed with the porters and about how much we need those porters for our own life existence. If it weren't for them, I don't think we would have ever made it. No. And, that my life lesson is to start using, here's a cliche, but the porters of our lives. You know what I'm saying? Yes. I think, in America, one of the things that our biggest problem is that we're pretty prideful, right? We think that we can do it on our own. We know that it's all me and no one else. And but I realized that, for me to get up top of that mountain, we needed 14 people to help us out, right? We needed the assistant guide, the cook, and 11 porters, and even those were kind of specialized. Even the little things like the bathroom and all the other stuff. So my life lesson that I learned was I need to use more people to help me to be a success to climb that mountain. All right, Joshua, one question for you. Name me one thing that gave you the most comfort on that trip.
This might sound weird, but probably the bathroom.
Why the bathroom?
Because it's way easier to hike when your stomach feels good. You know what I mean?
Yes, I know what you mean. I know exactly what you mean.
And you know, when I say the bathroom, the porters, they had a special like bathroom tent, and they brought like a portable toilet, and they had one porter in charge of everything, toiletries, everything, and he took care of you. So I mean, that was probably the pretty comforting.
I think I know what you mean. And, you know, it wasn't just the fact that the porter had the bathroom there. First of all, it was very close to the camp. And most of the public bathrooms were pretty far from where you were.
Yeah, they weren't nice either.
And they weren't nice. This was very nice. It smelled nice. They kept it very clean.
They had one porter in charge of everything that had to do with it. So.
And I would say equally as important is eating is going to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Especially with the food going through you. And I think partly that was because of the high altitude sickness that your body just couldn't handle the food. So you frequently had to go to the bathroom in doing that. So I totally agree. I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. What about you, Father? What do you think was the one comforting thing that on that trip?
Yeah, for me, if I remember well, is with the friendliness of the guys who accompanied us. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we would feel like giving up or don't want to eat anything, like we're losing appetite. But the guys will come, Father, eat. You can make it, no problem, eat. We are used to eat. So I was being encouraged by them in a way, regardless, maybe they are porters, they are guides, but they are good friends of ours. So for anyone who wishes to do hiking, climbing Mountain Kilimanjaro, expect the good things from others also, especially those who are accompanying you. They can be the source for you to make it. So for me, I can say they have contributed much in my achievements. So when I remember those voices reminding me that you can do it, we are used to it, do it, take this, do this. We are feeling cold, but you can do this, then the cold can be controlled. So it's a good history I remember. And I wish everyone of goodwill can make it like I made it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you, Father, is that those porters are the heroes of the trip.
Yes.
And I think you said this, Joshua, that, you know, for us to run a marathon, these guys are running 5 marathons. Yeah. You know, that, as the cliche says, you know.
So it's like, how much of a hero are you to run a marathon if, you know, 14 people have to run it 5 times for you?
Exactly. So. And these guys are not only running the marathon 5 times, you know, with you, but they're doing it cheerfully. They're doing it in a way that encourages you, you know. So what are all the sayings? Poli poli, Hakuna Matata, Twende.
Let's go.
Let's go. And they say it not in a commanding way, not in like, you know, the authoritative way, but always in a gentle way. I would say I really enjoyed Bryson.
Yeah.
Bryson was he the lead guide or was he
assistant guide?
Chief guide?
He was the chief guide?
Oh.
He has done this for 32 years.
Yes.
An experience which is unique.
Yes. So Bryson was this, you know, old, it's an affectionate term, old, crusty, salty Mount Kilimanjaro guy, had a very gentle voice. And he would give us briefings every day on what to expect. And he was always spot on what to wear, what to expect. And he just was very gentle. And knew what was going on. I never feared my life because of him. And it was amazing. There's times where I thought I was way ahead of him. In 2 seconds, he's right behind me. But I would say he was the brightest spot. You could have a conversation with him. He would show me the monkeys, show me all these different various things. And then he would usher me along. So it was very, the companionship is very, very, important. So I know I talked about what was the worst, but what was the dark, tell me, Josh, a moment in time where you really thought and you contemplated in your mind that said, I want to quit. Think about it. What was it, and how did you overcome it, and what was it?
I'm not gonna lie. There was no point where I was like, I absolutely was contemplating quitting. It was just never. It was more like, in the short term, it was more like, I just want to sit down right now. Like it wasn't like quit as in I want to get off. Like I want to start hiking back down. It was more like I just want to sit down.
I want to take a break.
I just want to take a break.
Yeah.
And like I said, the small goals help. Where, you're like, all right, I'm gonna look over there. I'm gonna make it there. Then I'm gonna sit down. Or I would actually do this. I would count in my head 20 steps, and then I would lean on my sticks. I would actually do that. And I would, they told us not to, but I did fall asleep when we took the breaks. I totally
so did I. I took a nap too.
And on the last day, I just totally passed out. I would just sit down, just on the rocks and then the sand, and just fall asleep. Yeah, but I would say there was no point in time where I was like, I want to just go down. I want to take oxygen and go back down. Yeah. It was more just like, I want to sit down. I want to take a break. So.
What about remember when we hit that one peak? It was the one with the radio, and then
we thought it was the camp,
and we thought that was the camp, and then we looked at it and we go, no, we have to go over there, and it was like, even my heart kind of went, oh my.
Yeah. Well, also I thought to myself, I'm like, I always prepare, like, after like the second day, I kind of started preparing myself. I'm like, with this there might be a slight chance that that's not the camp. And I could tell you I was definitely disappointed when that little thing was, because we had a good 2 miles to go after that.
Oh no, it was 2 miles. It was probably
super steep.
It was at least another 6 more miles, and the last part. So we had to go down, and then we had to go this big valley, and then we had to go up, and the up part wasn't it was like rock climbing going up to that last point, because I heard you just going, oh, and then no, I know what it was. You said to me, that's far. I said, that's not far. He goes, that's far.
Yeah, because you had to hike down and then up, which is way long. Because it might look close, but it's just a massive valley. It take you a long time.
How about you, Father? Was there any point that you thought in your mind, I want to quit?
No, I can say no. As Josh has said, I had a plan and the willpower and determination. The priority in my mind that I have to make it no matter what. But there are difficult times when I was leaning on my hiking sticks. Mm-hmm. There are difficult moments when the attitude was changing. I could take naps along the way. I could feel like you have to rest there, and I rested. And no matter what the guide told him, that you have to keep going, but sometimes I fail to keep going. I have to sit down, take a nap. said, no, don't sleep, wake up. And I had to wake up, immediately had to continue. But those was my difficult moments, and it was disturbing. But anyway, as a human being, you have some limitations.
Yeah.
But limitations is not something to make you fail to achieve something.
Yeah.
You have to be focused and strong in your determination.
Yeah.
So those was my difficult moments. As I remember, there is a camp called Barranco.
Yeah.
You have to cross the stream of water, and to climb this very steep rock mountain, and then you have to reach the other camp. And it was looking like the other camp was nearer, but it was far.
Yeah.
So I was kind of disappointed that how do I make it to the camp we are going to have the night there? But the Holy Power was telling me in my body that no, you have to make it. It's your duty to do so. So that was prompting in my body that I have to keep going.
Yeah.
And I kept going, but though with much ado.
Yeah.
Much ado along the way. But it was difficult, lesson giving, but all the way they say great people have great challenges also.
Yeah.
So that was for me.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So, it sounds like, I didn't have a, moment of quitting. I will say though, not to keep bashing on my son, but at that last camp, I was thinking, why can't we just camp here? Going down. That was the only time I was kind of thinking like, what, do we really need to go all the way back home?
I mean, it was only 3 hours left. So I was like,
it was the last painful 3 hours. But
I think it took us a lot longer than 3 hours.
Yeah.
It took you longer.
Yeah, it did. I was actually straggling behind and stuff. So we talk about the agony. How about any funny moments, like anything that you thought was pretty funny, when you experienced it?
Funny. Trying to think. I mean, I don't know if it's really funny or it's like, the porters are incredible. They carry like 50 pounds and they're leaping from rock to rock, like going 3 times as fast as you. And it just makes you smile because all of a sudden, 58-year-old Bryson will take your backpack plus his, strap it on his back and like smoke a cigarette while being on his phone going 3 times as fast as you. So
Yes.
you're just like, all right.
That is funny. That is, and you're absolutely right.
Yeah,
it's
the
like
porters will just make you smile because you're just like, oh my goodness.
yeah, exactly. They do make you smile. You're right, because they're like gazelles with this 50-pound.
Yeah.
It's not just 50-pound pack. They have their own pack, and then it's 50 pounds of stuff that they need to support you with that they're carrying either on their neck or on their head,
Yeah.
and they're running around like gazelles. And you're like walking with these like walking sticks and taking your time, going down, bend over and doing that. And they are funny. They truly are the heroes.
I would say the other funny part was the soup. If you want to explain the soup.
The soup. So yes, the soup was very funny. So we really had delicious food at Mount Kilimanjaro, and so every time that we had food, it would be basically, a soup and then the main course and then fruit. That's how it evolved, right? But every time they would bring in the soup, they would say, oh, it's squash soup. So we eat the soup. The next day they would say, it's leek soup, and it looked exactly like the same soup as the other soup, and then they would say it's some other vegetable soup.
Like,
anyway,
it's the same soup.
Exactly, it was the same soup.
They say it's a different vegetable, but it was the same soup.
So that was always the funny part of it, was what kind of soup name were they going to call it, even though it's the same soup. So any funny parts with you, Father? Like what kind of...
What was fun along the way, For me, I'm not kind of liking eating popcorns, but when we were just hiking, the popcorns was best for me. Whenever I saw them, I was like, yeah. Happy. They had a good taste for me.
Yeah, that always comforting.
And also, the other funny thing was I could see the birds. Those were the hawks. The birds were just, we found there the birds.
The beds.
The birds, yeah. Where the birds, only one type of birds were seen there. And the mouse. I didn't expect to see the mouse there.
Oh, yeah.
Given the altitudes and the weather.
Yeah.
But it was funny for me to see the birds just moving around, ready to take some piece of meat, leftovers, and the mouses. So it was very funny for me. I thought maybe you are going there, you not encounter any bird, any mouse, anything else.
Anything living, right.
But that shows how God provides differently in the living things.
Yeah.
So that was the most funny part of me when I was just hiking there.
Yeah.
Yes.
There were a lot of birds and animals that were there when I didn't expect any.
Yeah.
Like especially at Bronco Point where they had, or camp I should say, where they had mouse there and stuff, and it was interesting. It was very, very interesting. It was fun. No, I mean, I would definitely say the soup was the hilarious thing for me. Just guess that soup, even though it was the same soup. Guess that soup.
Maybe if I can add something for the funny things, was as my friend Josh has said, the porters.
Yeah.
You could start hiking hairy and leave them behind. They could find you along the way and go ahead of you. Then I was asking myself, how strong are they and how weak I am?
Yeah.
But you could see that they are used to do so for many, many years. And you are doing it just for the first time. So, beginning a new experience, takes some efforts and difficulties, but for them, they are used to do so.
Yeah.
So it was fun, but I could figure out like that they are used to do it.
Yeah. So, Josh, you've read Lord of the Rings. Have you ever read Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien? It's with the Hobbit and everything.
Not yet.
Yeah. And so I'll just ask you, in essence, this climb, it kind of reminded me of the Lord of the Rings, or, where it's the Fellowship and we're going, to Misty Mountain, let's say.
I mean, I read the books a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen the movies in a while, but I think the point you're referencing is Frodo and Sam when they're climbing the volcano.
Yeah, climbing the volcano, and there's a fellowship that's created and everything. So in the series, there were a lot of spiritual things that you can get out of it, you can glean from it. What do you think is a spiritual thing that you could glean from this, Joshua?
I mean, I'm just going to say the obvious, just like determination, when it really comes down to it. Not to be cliche, but, in my mind, I'm like, there's no chance I'm going back down without getting to the top. Like, it wasn't an option. It wasn't, so then you just have to rely on your determination and, one step after the other, bring yourself to one point to the next, and then, like I said, look behind you and be like, okay, I did all that. What else can I do? You look up and you're like, there we go.
Yeah.
Let's get to the top. Yeah. So, that's probably the biggest thing.
Yeah. I mean, for me, what I learned from a spiritual standpoint is that, what kind of through those, life kind of made it difficult is the hills and the valleys, right? And so, we would say something like, oh, that's only 5 kilometers away. But in reality, it was, 20 kilometers away. And that was because I always told you the difference is as the crow flies versus what you're really doing, right? Yeah. And what made it so much longer was that there was all these valleys and hills and everything else. And the spiritual thing that I realized is that for me was that life is nothing more than a series of, hills and valleys, hills and valleys, and hills and valleys. And if we can view that in that spiritual way, then we can use our determination to accomplish a lot. That basically, there are going to be days where we're going to look at it and say, oh my goodness, I didn't expect this to be that further or that long. And that's what helps us understand that determination. A lot of people wanted our lives to be kind of like a straight and narrow road, and it never does. It's always those challenges where we have to go up a hill, and then there's days where it becomes easy and we go down the valley, and that's what it is. The other thing that I gleaned from spiritually was, again, that people actually do help us, and we fail to see that sometimes when we achieve our accomplishments, right? That our accomplishments aren't gained because we did it all by ourselves. Our accomplishments are gained because we have those porters who helped us out. And those porters might be our parents, might be our teachers, might be co-workers, might be books that we read somewhere else or whatever it is. And so we can't be prideful and say, I did it all by myself. There's always been those porters. And even if you look at people who climb Mount Everest, they have Sherpas that help them climb that and everything else. So what about you, Father? What spiritual thing can you glean from?
From the hiking.
Yes.
I think the spiritual part of all the process for me was centered on faith. And we were told that faith is to expect the unknown. So I didn't know anything about the camps, about the attitudes, about everything along the way up to the peak. But I relied on the guides. The guides could tell that you expect this and this and this. By putting faith, then things would go. And that has given him the lesson that whatever faith you put in a thing which is good, you achieve it eventually, because faith keeps you moving, and faith invites hope, invites love. So you find you get friends along the way, and that friendship makes you together as one, and you can move with the others who have done it for so many times, and you for the first time. So when you do it with the faith behind and faith unseen, then you make it. That's what happened for me, and that's the most spiritual thing I learned along the way up to the peak.
Yeah.
To and fro, I can say.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Father.
Yeah.
That's really great. I mean, you're absolutely right that you have to have faith, and faith just in God, not just in God, but also in the porters.
Yes.
Their guides and what they say and what they do. I think that we did rely a lot of faith on them, because we would get briefed by Bryson, who was our chief guide, and we just trusted him. He said, wear 2 layers, you wore 2 layers. Wear the thick jacket, you wore the thick jacket. And his advice was spot on, and it's important how faith plays an important role, not just to achieve our end state, which is faith in heaven, but also here on earth. That if you don't have faith in what these guys are saying, then why even do it? Because you won't make it. You have to believe in them just as much as they believe in you. I think that's really, really important. All right, Josh, last question. Mm-hmm. You can say if you were to give someone your age okay, advice, the most important advice to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, okay, and you can do more than one, what would it be?
Clip your toenails. Advice. I mean, obviously, there comes a level of preparation, but, to be honest, as prepared as you are physically, the biggest part for me was the pain of the sickness. Like, I had no problems hiking 13 miles. I was tired, yes, but the probably the most prominent pain that I was feeling was the sickness. So if you kind of prepare yourself for that, I don't know, is taking the high altitude medicine cheating?
I think it is.
I think about it because I took an aspirin, but they do nothing for you.
Yes,
like they do nothing. But I would just say, like, don't quit. Not to be cliche with it, but just prepare yourself for a lot of pain.
Yes, if you don't take high altitude sickness pills,
yeah.
Which we were hardcore and we didn't.
I didn't even know that. Like,
you could take that.
That's
because you weren't prepared.
I didn't know high altitude sickness pills were a thing. Because I probably would have taken them if I knew they were. So I just thought this is how it goes. And apparently you can take these pills that you don't feel this pain at all.
I don't know. We don't know if that's true or not,
but
but some people that we knew took them felt like, oh yeah, that was...
this is fine.
This is fine. So, Father, with you, if you were to give advice to a fellow priest, okay, to climb this mountain, what would that advice be?
I think for me, I would advise anybody else before climbing to do some kind of thorough preparation. Yeah, because I take an example of myself. When I was told that you are going to accompany Josh and Dave to climb Mountain Kilimanjaro, that is to say mass in the camps on the way going to the Uhuru Peak. I bought a rope to every day morning, waking up around 5 and jump my rope for like 500 times, sweating, cooling my body, then taking shower. I could feel better by then, but I was kind of preparing my body.
Yeah.
That there's something coming for you, and that was hiking. So I'd advise my fellow priest or anybody to make a kind of a thorough preparation, but taking something of a physical exercise which will prepare him for that the body should get familiar with this kind of physical thing which can be making the body strong and ready. So that's one point. Then the other thing is train your mind that there is something coming. If mind accepts, the body will accept. If your mind accepts something, then the body will tune itself on how to accomplish it. So you train your mind, and at the same time you train your body. Mm. Then if that is done in a perfect way, I think other things are like history. For me, I didn't take anything from tablets or any other medicine. I didn't take anything apart from what was advised by the guides.
Yeah.
So you have to take tea, drink soup, or eat this. Then you'll get strong and you keep going. Only that.
Yeah.
So if you tune your mind, train your body, and be set and ready, you can do it.
Yeah.
It's possible.
Yeah.
So I will encourage the others out there that don't get afraid. Don't fear the unknown.
Yeah.
Put faith in the unknown.
Yeah.
Then you can make it.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think the common theme here is a good mindset.
Yeah.
A can-do attitude, one of determination. That's the common denominator. And I would say that's the same thing. Because as you said, Father, if you can, if you have a good mindset, the physical will follow.
Yeah.
But with that said, I would also, for me, the 2 lessons I learned that I would recommend is getting physically in shape, which I did somewhat. I did strength training, which is lifting, which helped me out a lot, immensely. And the second is invest in some really good hiking shoes that fit you. And this is my recommendation. So many people worry about going up. I had problems going down, and most of my pain was going down than going up. It was 2 types of pain. Going up, the pain was more, not breathing, being physically tired. It was just a lot of determination from your mind standpoint. But going down, there was a lot of physical pain in your foot, in your knees, and I think you can avoid a lot of the foot pain if you get good mountain bike hiking boots and doing that. So this wraps up our episode for today on our climb. We hope to have you listen to us next week, and we pray for you and keep us in our prayers, because we still need to finish our Africa trip here, where we're going to visit the orphanage, as well as we need to fly back home to the United States. So God bless. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to me, David Cease at Practical Catholic. Take a moment and reflect. What's holding me back from accomplishing something great? Feel free to share your reflection or leave a comment on the podcast, Instagram, and Facebook at Practical Catholic, or visit my webpage at practicalcatholic1, that is the number 1.com. Join me next week as we discuss the people of Africa and an interview with Archbishop of Tabora, Archbishop Razuka.
You're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.